Welcome to Better Sex, where you get the information and inspiration to create and enjoy your best possible sex life. Join your host, sex therapist Jessa Zimmerman, as she brings you expert guests, helpful tips, knowledge, and strategies to improve your intimate relationships. And now, your host, Jessa Zimmerman.
Hey, welcome back to the Better Sex Podcast. This is Jessa. So glad you are here with me. Although we're talking about somewhat of a heavy topic today, we're going to be talking about cheating, infidelity, with a little bit of focus on when you're the cheater. Although we do talk about what it's like to be cheated on and some of the work for both sides and how that feels for both people, but we're sort of looking at, why people cheat, what they can learn from that, what kind of work they might need to do, how you really can come out better, relationship 2.0, but not that you necessarily will. That may not be what you choose. But anyway, I'm here with the person who wrote the book on this, Dr. Tammy Nelson, who wrote When You're the Cheater. And I hope you're going to get a ton out of the episode. And before we start the show today, it is sponsored by Intimacy with Ease. It's a method to help otherwise happy couples achieve a sex life that is easy and fun for both of them, so that you can actually just enjoy your sex life with zero stress. For more information, if you want to watch a brief little training video that's available, all of that, go to intimacywithease.com. So Tammy, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, and I know you've done a lot of work, so we're going back in time a little bit to talk about infidelity, but so I appreciate you being willing to dive back into that. What makes this an important topic from your perspective?
Well, it's certainly an evergreen topic, so it's not really a problem to dive back in because I'm always here swimming in the sea.
Yeah.
I just had people on session right before this call, who are struggling with this issue, people who are dealing with infidelity, and there is never one reason that people have an affair. There's never one reason that people cheat. So, even now, in the pandemic, I know we want to make this an evergreen conversation, but certainly it's been a year.
Yes.
The pandemic. Yeah. And since people have been shut in or shut down or locked in, and you would think that with the restrictions, people getting out and getting around, that infidelity would have decreased. But actually, Ashley Madison went from 15,000 signups a day to 17,000 signups a day.
Oh, wow. I was just, in my own practice, I get plenty of infidelity, but most of it has not been happening like in the pandemic. So it's interesting because so many people are locked down, but it's also causing a lot more distress for couples. So
totally is. And I think that, when you've been home and sort of stuck, I think that there's a part of your brain that still wants to seek. There's a seeking part of your brain.
Yeah.
And if you're somebody that gets relief from stress, from seeking, we're not seeking restaurants, we're not seeking movies, we're not seeking parking places. So, and we've sought out every movie on Netflix. I'm sure you've seen everything that's possible to see.
Right.
People get bored. And so they're looking now outside online just out of complete boredom, and some of those those moments of seeking turn into online infidelity. And as we've learned over time, online infidelity can really turn into real-time infidelity if left unchecked.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit just about sort of numbers. What do we know about how common is cheating? Who's cheating? What's the sort of lay of the land? And then we can start to talk about all the various reasons that drive somebody to do that.
It's really hard to get specific numbers about how many people are cheating, who's cheating, because just by its very nature, people lie to the researchers because infidelity is based on dishonesty, right?
Right.
It's hard to get good numbers. I mean, women tend to hide their infidelity still, and men tend to brag about it. So we have sort of, imbalanced numbers around infidelity and not good numbers as far as online infidelity, because also it's hard to judge like what is infidelity.
I was just going to say, where's the line? Because I know we talk about like emotional infidelity, and then we've got online, virtual online, and then we've got actually meeting up and having sex with somebody else. So is that just all in the eye of the beholder?
Well, it certainly is, but I define it as three things. One, there's some kind of outside relationship that doesn't involve your primary partnership. Two, there's some kind of sexual relationship. So it might just be like sending pictures of yourself or flirting online or having some kind of emotional relationship that has sexual undertones. Or it could be paying a sex worker or having webcam sex or going to an OnlyFans page or, some kind of sexual content. And then the third part is the dishonesty.
Yeah.
So it's the hiding, the lying, the gaslighting, the saying, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not my email.
Yeah.
Really to sort of define infidelity by those three things is a way to begin at least the conversation, so that if you're talking to your partner about what they're doing online, you can talk about like, which is the part that actually bothers you when they say, well, it's not really cheating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Say, well, it has this, it has this, and it has that.
So is this where, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on this, but it sounds like with this definition, viewing pornography would not count because that has not got a relational component. Or, I know it's a conversation we have with couples, but certainly some people come in and think my partner's looking at porn, that's cheating.
Yeah. It really is dependent on their implicit monogamy agreement. So porn is not really about the relationship with the images. It's really about your relationship with masturbation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have this implicit understanding, like, hey, I thought you weren't going to do that. I thought I was going to be the only one that was going to touch your penis. And I don't feel like touching your penis, so no one's touching your penis.
Right.
But if you have this implicit understanding, like, wait, masturbation is private. That's what I'm going to do. It's my venue. And I shouldn't even have to tell you about it. And so when you walk in on me, it's like a personal affront to my privacy. People see it differently. And certainly it can feel like a betrayal and create the same betrayal shame if you view it as you are breaking the bounds and the explicit agreement that we made about what sex is in our relationship. Now, certainly people can feel betrayed by the imagery. So that has to do with our relationship too, because if you're attracted to this, how could you be attracted to me?
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't look anything like me, or they're doing things that I would never do. That's a whole nother, you're right. That's a whole
right. That's a whole other rabbit hole. Right. Okay. So let's talk about some of, how do you categorize cheating based on the reasons or what people are seeking? Or like, how do you break down the various kinds of cheating there might be, or the reasons that people do it?
Well, I see it a couple different ways. I think cheating could be a makeup or breakup or kind of a wake-up call. So
okay.
Sometimes people cheat as a can opener, as a way to get out of their relationship. It's clear that if I cheat, you're definitely going to break up with me. And I know it. It might be unconscious or it could be very conscious. It could be a way of avoiding me having to do the breaking up because I know you'll do it for me. So I call those like the can opener affair.
Okay.
But for other people, it can be the way that we wake up the conversation in our relationship. And those affairs tend to be a turning point in a relationship where things become more explicit, where the conversation changes, where the sex life is woken up, where people have a tendency after some good therapy to say, maybe that was the best thing that could have happened to us. Now, if you're in the middle of a crisis and you've just discovered your partner's infidelity, you probably don't want to hear that. And you're throwing things right now, listening to the podcast. But it does happen.
Yeah. I imagine people don't necessarily have that fork in the road. Are we breaking up, or is this a wake-up call right when they're making the choice to cheat? Like some people do. Like you said, some people know, hey, I'm just out of this. I want you to, like I don't care enough to not cheat. But some of the other people probably don't realize which way they're going, I'd imagine.
Sometimes they don't. I see it in women a lot when they're the ones that cheat, that when they feel like they don't have a voice in the relationship, Sometimes they'll have an affair and go, God, I didn't even know I wanted to break up until I did this. And now I realized where we were headed. And so it can be that for sure. It can also be a way to stay in a relationship that's not filling a person's needs. And so for some people, and this is very common, it's a way to stay in the marriage. And, if you're a spouse, you don't necessarily want to hear that. But for a lot of people, they have all their needs met, everything they ever wanted. They're happy in their marriage. They're happy with their spouse. They're even having good sex. But there's a part of them that feels unfulfilled. And so they have an affair because it makes them explore parts of themselves that they can't within the marriage. That doesn't make it right. But, people rarely look for someone to cheat with. They look for someone to be. But that's hard to wrap your mind around if you're the one that's being cheated on.
Could you say a little bit more about that? Because that just seems really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, with all due respect, if you're the person that is the other woman or the other man, because I don't mean to sound like I'm discounting what it means to be the other person, the outside partner. But really, if you're choosing to cheat, it's not necessarily that you're choosing this other person because they're this magical replacement or they're this, miracle. You're not necessarily trading your partner in for someone else, a better model. What you're doing is looking for a different model of yourself. So
who you can be in the relationship or who you can be in sex or something about your own expression, which maybe goes to, I can't remember what the stats are, but about how if people leave their partner for this new affair partner, how many of those relationships end? Right? Like it's huge, but most of that, because it's
only about 7% of people who leave their partner will stay married to their outside partner.
Yeah.
It's not really worth leaving for that person. But it's also really important that if you choose to stay married after an affair, because most affairs end after about a year at the most, they rarely last longer than that. If you choose to stay and try to make it work, you also both have to acknowledge that part of you that came out in the affair can't just go underground. You can't just say, okay, I'll end the affair and I swear I'll never be that person again. That part of you has to be integrated into the marriage. You can't blame your spouse and say, well, she doesn't like me that way, or I could never be that way with him. Or, you can't blame your partner because then you'll end up resenting them and feeling like you can't live your best life and be your best self. And you're going to end up having another affair or breaking up anyway.
Yeah. And then it seems to me quite different. Of course, we see everything in our practice, right? Somebody's on a trip, drinks too much, sort of accidentally ends up having this thing, comes home and tells their partner right away. Maybe even calls them, right, from Philadelphia or whatever, versus somebody who's having...
Specific, just
wherever they are on this trip. Right?
I don't know. That seems very specific.
Versus somebody who's having a long-term affair with your sister, gaslighting you the whole way, right? Like there's a spectrum of, I don't even know what I'd call that, like perpetration or I don't know, maybe it's just dishonesty, but you want to talk a little bit about the kind of nature of violation maybe that people experience?
The way I describe it is that it's a spectrum of dishonesty. So
okay.
You can do exactly that. You can, you might come clean right away and say, oh my God, I'm like really hot for this guy at work and I feel really awkward about it. And I think we should go to therapy or talk about it because it could be a risk. I feel like something's going down here. And I don't know if it's because of where we are in our relationship or where I am in my own sexuality, or if it's just normal human attraction. Like, we might be married, but I'm not dead. So, stuff's going to happen.
Yeah.
Versus the person who gets caught and is trying in a way to protect their partner from the reality because they don't want to hurt them. They also don't want to lose their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So they might deny it. And even in the face of reality, say, that's not my email. I don't know what you're talking about. And your partner sees your pictures that you're sending back and forth to your outside partner. And you're still like, that's not me. I don't know.
Yeah, right. That's not my penis or my vulva, right?
Yeah. You're saying there. You're just making that up. When that's what gaslighting is, to try to make you feel crazy. But they do it, in a way, because that avoidance is really about avoiding the conflict.
Right.
The fear of like getting in trouble and what's going to happen. And I don't want to deal with it. And people will usually do that for a long time until, something blows up or it's inevitable that they can't avoid it anymore.
So we got two sides of this coin, right? We've got the adulterer. I keep going to David Snarsh's language, the adulterer and the resolute partner. I don't know what you call these two people, but how does the resolute partner decide it's worth staying? That this is not just some scoundrel, that there is, we really could have relationship 2.0. Like, what's the sort of coaching or advice you give to somebody in those shoes? And then the cheater, what do they need to wrestle with or really take on if they're, because you hear it said, oh, once a cheater, always a cheater. And it's like, I don't believe that, but what's it take to sort of learn and grow and evolve from that kind of choice?
Yeah, I don't think once a cheater, always a cheater applies. Certainly not in all circumstances. It might apply, but there's so many reasons behind people cheating that it's such a globalizing statement. It's just
right.
It's irrelevant. But for the person who's been cheated on, I think it's very easy for us on the outside to say, oh, you got to get out of that relationship, right? That's our initial reaction. You've been cheated on. Well, you better lose that person. You better break up. You better leave. You can never trust them again. That's why you shouldn't really tell anyone if that happens, because, your friends and family are going to mean well, but they're not really in your bed with that person. So it's best, especially in the conflict phase in the beginning, not to tell people, because there's another phase after that, which is the insight phase, which is where you kind of start to figure out what happened and how did we get here, and how did I play a part, and what do I really want? It's not until like the vision phase, which is the third phase of recovery, that people start to make a decision about, like, really, do I want to stay? Do I want to create something new together? Because you can't really go back to the way things were. You have to create something new.
Yeah.
So it's only really in that phase that people decide if they're even going to stay or go. So the way that people decide if they're going to stay or go, particularly if they're working with me, is both have to decide if they're going to create a new monogamy, like a new relationship. It can't be the old marriage or the old committed partnership, because that worked up until a point. But obviously, if you're cheating, it stopped working.
Yeah.
So you can't continue that. You have to draw a line in the sand and start something new.
Hi, it's Jessa here, taking just a quick break. Thanks for listening so far. I wanted to let you know about the sex quiz that I've put together called How Healthy Is Your Sex Life? I've taken a close look at the typical ways that I see couples get into trouble with sex, including avoidance, neglect, negativity, distraction, and boredom. And the free quiz will score your individual results based on these factors. And then I provide my recommendations and ideas, including my top 10 sex tips, which will help you make instant improvement. If you'd like to take the quiz and see how healthy your sex life is, you can do it right now at sexhealthquiz.com. And are there red flags? I'm thinking again for the person being cheated on. Red flags that would be like, you know what, this is, my partner doesn't want to leave the relationship, but this is not actually trustworthy.
Yeah, I think, there's clearly red flags when someone won't stop cheating. They won't end the outside relationship, but people usually don't end the outside relationship until they feel like the inside relationship is strong enough and rewarding enough to come back to. And unless there's erotic recovery, that outside partner is still going to be in bed with you. So people, I think, misunderstand the recovery process. Like, people think they have to forgive. And forgiveness is like, forgiveness really means nothing. It's like I'm sorry means nothing.
Yeah.
Say I'm sorry. Like, now what? Now the person you cheated on has to forgive you? Like, what? They owe you something? So you got the affair and now you got forgiveness too? Like, what does the other person get?
Yeah.
So on the days when the other person feels like we have such an imbalance of power, I'm going to take back my forgiveness because I feel like I got nothing out of this deal. And so the goal is not forgiveness. The goal is, to work on your erotic life, to create a new sex life going forward that's worth staying in this relationship for. And so a red flag would be, someone who really is never going to work on their sex life, or will always compare you to someone else on the outside, or was critical of your sexuality or your body, or compares you to other people, or continues to look outside the relationship, or feels entitled to an affair, then they got to go.
Yeah. I mean, maybe I'm jumping around, and we should talk a little bit about what's the road to recovery and what does this process look like? Because I'm also thinking, wow, the person that got cheated on often has ruminating thoughts and has our time, they're picturing this thing all the time. How do they move from, what'd you say, conflict to insight to recovery? Is that
like a crisis? And then the second phase is to have some insight into what happened. So that tends to be like the longest phase, and people get triggered and go back to the crisis sometimes, but usually, if they're in therapy, if they're doing good work, then they can stay in the insight phase and sort of hash out, okay, how did we get here? Do I really want to be with you? Did we do any work on a relationship? Did we get here because we've been neglecting our relationship all these years? Or, is this a real trauma to our erotic life? And we really got to figure this out if we're ever going to make it work. It really is a trauma to your erotic life. It's not like you cheat with someone who cleans the kitchen better.
Right.
This is a sexual injury to your relationship. So you have to work on your sex life. And, during that insight phase, people discover, look, this isn't necessarily about you. It's not about the marriage. It's about me. And I got to figure out who I became in the affair. And then the person who was cheated on has to figure out, okay, well, who did I become as a result of this affair? Because people change because of this.
Yeah.
It's a life-changing event.
Yeah.
And then the third phase is really the vision, like creating the vision. All right, if we're going to make this thing work, we got to create something totally new. And what's that going to look like? It can't look like the first relationship. Like, you have many relationships within the lifetime of your marriage, and it can't be based on, your vows or your understanding of what relationship was supposed to be, because obviously it didn't end the way you wanted it to. So you got to create something totally new, and it has to be based on what the two of you want. Like, it can't be what I want, can't be what your parents want or your church or your synagogue. Like, it really has to be personal to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds easy, but it's harder than you think to wrap your mind around the possibility you can have whatever you want.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Well, and especially out of crisis. Like, I just know so many people can be in so much pain in the beginning. It's hard to imagine there's any positive outcome for this, or there is what 2.0, like, it's almost inconceivable to people in the midst of that.
No, you're absolutely right.
So what's some of the work for the cheater? Actually, first, before that, does cheating ever come from a good place? I mean, I understand that people might get to a 2.0 and sometimes they're better than ever. But is it always, just a bad thing to do? Is that too judgment laden?
Look, there's 65 million people in the world that are on Ashley Madison. I mean, if we were all so morally corrupt, there's an argument to be made there that perhaps part of it is human nature. I don't know. Like, I struggle with the concept of, are we meant to be monogamous? Like,
yeah.
I don't know if we're born monogamous. I don't know if we're born knowing how to eat with a fork either. Like,
right.
I think it's something you choose. So the issue to me is not monogamy so much as honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And so I struggle with cheating only because I don't like the idea of being dishonest. But I also think we underestimate how much the partner who's cheated on is sort of unconsciously cooperating in the relationship because it works for them.
Could you say just a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like, there's a lot of those couples on Ashley Madison where the partner is in a sort of don't ask, don't tell place.
Okay.
Maybe it works for them on some level. And, it stabilizes their sex life. They don't want to have this kind of sex. They don't want to have as much sex. Their partner's happier when they're doing that. They know maybe they're looking for people for their partner together. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Okay. Well, that wouldn't be cheating because, right, that didn't involve dishonesty. But I think what you're suggesting is some of the partners who are cheated on have some sort of inkling or hunch or idea. And they're just, never mind. Don't tell me. I don't want to look.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
And I mean, who am I to judge if someone is cheating to stay in their family, stay in their marriage, stay with their kids, stay with their husband, so they don't break up their family? I don't know. Like, I don't have I don't come from like a place of like moral high ground where I try not to be so black and white that I'm like the judge and jury. I think people make decisions based on what they need to survive in the world. And if that's working for them, okay. But, I come from sort of the harm reduction school of thought where, well, let's see if we can, arrange your life so you don't lose your job or get an STI or hurt people in your life or destroy your children or lose your presidency or whatever, like let's try not to destroy other people. If you're being selfish or narcissistic and following your own needs, how can you do it in a way that's not going to hurt anybody else?
That raises another question, which is, should you tell your partner that you've cheated if it's over or in the middle of it? Like but especially if it's over. Like I've had clients, couples, it's like they cheated, however, a year ago, 10 years ago, whatever. Should they reveal that to their partner because it's just going to destroy them,
Such a classic question, right? So, the best answer is, and then we can talk about how you feel about this. The best answer is if you're telling your partner just to make yourself feel better and it's going to destroy them, then it's selfish. So how do you make that decision? Like, it'll make me feel better, but it's going to ruin you. And it was, an irrelevant thing that happened in one night stand 10 years ago when I was on a business trip. Like, I'll feel better because I will have confessed, but you will be destroyed for the rest of your life. So the kind of rule of thumb is if it's going to hurt you, but at your expense, it's going to make me feel better, then not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because a lot of people say if their partner cheated on them, they want to know.
Yeah.
They want to know. I don't care if you think it's going to hurt me. I want you to tell me.
Yeah. The idea of letting you operate on all the information, I think, is where a lot of people come from. Not just, I'll feel better because I confess, but more like I'm letting you live with a lie or a fantasy, which doesn't seem right.
But, the other school of thought is, there's a lot of things that your partner probably doesn't tell you, and I don't know if I want to know. Like, there's the other piece of like, how much do I want to know? Like, because once you know, you can't unknow it.
Yeah.
So you have to think really clearly about, okay, maybe I do want to know this part, but how much of that do I want to know? Do I want to know the details? Do I want to know what they were thinking? Do I want to know, what the potential was? There was a conversation that my partner and I had, my husband and I had at one point where he said, yeah, there was a moment where I wondered if we should stay together. And I was like destroyed.
Oh.
But of course, I had that same exact thought at that same exact time in our marriage. But the fact that he told me that he had that, I was like, are you kidding? So upset. I was so mad. But, if he hadn't told me, I would have felt so righteous that I had that thought and I had decided we should stay together and work it out. I would have felt so good about myself. But the fact that he had that, I was like, I was crushed. So there's like a part of this that you have to decide, like, how much information do you really want to know?
Yeah. And so for the cheater, I mean, it seems to me, okay, they've got to reckon with who were they in the affair? What are these parts of themselves that really need some space?
Right.
I guess I partly approach this that, cheating can be the way I think of it is a bad solution to a problem. So what enabled the cheater to choose this bad solution, be dishonest and maybe gaslight their partner or lie to their face or whatever, instead of just be upfront about what it is they needed or wanted or what they were struggling with. So that seems like part of the work too.
It is. And most people will say and think at the time, and even in retrospect, that they really didn't believe that they could get that need met by the partner.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's true or not, that's the feeling. So they might have felt like, yeah, I could have told you, but no matter what you did, you could never be, a 20-year-old Asian boy. So there's nothing that would have satisfied that need, or you could have never been, a 60-year-old MILF. Like, it just wouldn't have happened. So there are certain things that people don't share because they don't want their partner to feel inadequate because they could never meet that need. One of the things in my book, When You're the One Who Cheats, I did use Ashley Madison as a research model because just the vast amount of research you can do with them because the vast amount of people.
Yeah.
And what I found is that the men that were on there, middle-aged people in general, the men were all looking for emotional affairs. And they didn't want to leave their wives, but they really wanted someone that they could have a more intense emotional connection with and sex. But they didn't want like a one-night stand. They didn't want just a sexual relationship. And it was the exact opposite for women. Women didn't want to hear anyone's problem. They're like, you have a wife for that. I don't want to hear your shit. And they just wanted sex. They were like,
that sounds like a lot of unhappy matches then through Ashley Madison, because we've got opposite.
Well, I think sociologically, like anthropologically, if you look at it from a society issue, like middle-aged women have been raising their family and taking care of their emotional needs all their lives. And like, okay, enough. Now I want to just have good sex. And men who have grown as men and have been, being human doings instead of human beings and doing a lot of things for a lot of people, get to the point in their midlives where their wives have pulled away because they're overly busy taking care of everybody. And they're like, you know what? I miss the connection and I want to feel my feelings. I'm at midlife and I want to feel some stuff. I've been busy working and doing stuff and now I want to feel something.
So what might somebody do instead of cheating? Like, let's imagine there's some other way to get to relationship 2.0 that doesn't involve dishonesty and the crisis and the harm of that.
Well, I am a big believer that we go through, now that we live so long and we tend to stay healthier than ever, that we now go through what I consider a second adolescence. So when our kids are grown, we have a little bit more money in our pockets, we're a little bit more independent. Part of the reason that couples tend to split up or to cheat is because they're revisiting some of the same developmental challenges that they had in adolescence. So they get hypersexual, they get hyper-focused on their bodies, they start to wonder what other people think of them, they want to act out, they want to do something exciting, and they want to rebel, and they want to separate and differentiate and to create another level of their personality. And their family is the people that they're married to. So they're separating and differentiating and rebelling from their spouses. And so they're hiding under the kitchen table, texting their girlfriends and their boyfriends and telling their spouses, you can't tell me what to do. I'll be home when I want. And I can do whatever I want. And if I want a boyfriend or girlfriend, I can do it. And I'm going to be home late and I'm going to a concert. And what do you mean I'm dressed like in fringe vests? I can do what I want. And what do you mean you found my pot in the drawer? Like, I can have pot. It's legal now. There's so much of that same adolescent behavior in a lot of these relationships. And I think if couples can find that together and experience that as partners instead of parentifying their relationship, then the partner who's left at home isn't going, Jesus, when are you going to be home? Like, I can't believe you didn't call me. I don't want to be your mother. I don't want to be your father. I don't want to be your parent. Like, I can't sit home and wait for you anymore. Like, if both partners can say, wow, we have like a little bit of freedom, the kids are a little older, the pandemic's ending, we're getting our vaccine. Maybe it's time for the two of us to go to a concert when it's time, go out, take a trip, do something to perk up our sex life, like work on our stuff together and have fun together. Because if you don't, you're going to end up doing it on your own.
So, yeah, and it sounds a little bit like normalizing this sort of second adolescence and being willing to tolerate the anxiety it might bring up. Because I would imagine plenty of people feel like, wait, I know the status quo, this feels safe, I don't want to change anything, but to step into the discomfort of like, okay, let's reinvent here a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that your word is exactly right. It's time to reinvent and to find those parts of you that maybe you didn't get to express in your adolescence. It's why people take up hobbies. It's why they buy convertibles. It's why, it's all of that.
So I guess I want to, and unless there's anything else I haven't asked or that's coming to mind that we should really cover, but if people are somewhere in this process in either the crisis or the insight part, is there some parting word of like hope to give them that, that you really can rebuild trust, that this really is possible to not have this just devastate your relationship?
Yeah, I think if you're the one that's being cheated on, I think it's important to know the difference between your intuition and your fear, and that there is a turning point where you remember that your intuition is the thing that will help you to learn to trust again. It really doesn't have anything to do with your partner. Like, they can jump through a million hoops and give you all their passwords and let you into their email, but that's not going to help you to trust them. What's going to help you move forward is when you remember that you can trust that little voice inside of you that says, oh, this person is telling me the truth, or this person's still cheating. Like, you'll know.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Trust your intuition, and that will come back. It takes a while.
Yeah.
But that will come back. And if you're the person who's cheating, it's totally normal to grieve the end of that relationship. Don't use your partner to help you get through the grief. Go to therapy. Have some outside support. Like, your partner is not your parent. They're not supposed to help you through that. Yes, you're going to miss that life. No one comes back from an affair and says, oh my God, that sucked for me.
Yeah.
It's usually pretty damn good. But, the hard part is that you hurt your partner. There's fallout, and you might feel guilt and shame and regret. And you got to work through that, but not with your partner. So find a therapist that understands, read when you're the one who cheats, like get some help under you so that you don't have to go through it alone, because it's part of that loneliness that's going to send you back out.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. All right. Would you say a little word about where people could find you online and what you might want to let them know that you have available?
Yeah. So people can go to drtammynelson.com. It's DrTammynelson, drtammynelson.com. They can also go to my podcast, which is The Trouble with Sex. And you can find my books anywhere books are sold. When You're the One Who Cheats is on Amazon or at my website. And if they email me through my website or go to Tammy@drtammynelson.com and tell me that they're one of your wonderful listeners, I'll send them a free gift, like an ebook.
Oh, well, thank you for that. Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show.
My pleasure. It's always fun to talk to you.
You've been listening to Better Sex. Please visit our website, bettersexpodcast.com, for show notes and additional episodes.
And that's a wrap for today. I really hope you enjoyed the episode. If you are enjoying the podcast, if some of this material resonates with you and you would like to make a difference and make sure that this keeps coming out in the world once a week, ongoing, there are a couple things you could do to show your appreciation. The first would be to go to iTunes and rate and review the show. That really helps us be found by new listeners when you review the show on iTunes. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/iTunes. The other thing I want to invite you to consider is becoming a Patreon. For a small monthly pledge, you get some benefits. So for $2 a month, you get advance access to every single episode. For $5 a month, you get a chapter of my upcoming new book. And for $10 a month, I host quarterly get-to-know-you and question and answer chats over the web, and you get invited to that. I would love to have your membership in that, become part of the Better Sex family. You can find a link at bettersexpodcast.com/Patreon, which is Patreon. Again, thanks for listening. I'm glad you're here. Feel free to comment, ask questions, get in touch. I'd love to hear from listeners. Thanks.